Good evening. It's just thrilling to see all of you here, and there's another 150 of you in virtual land. So what a turnout. Thank you. So my name is Ann Stanton. I'm the executive director and a co-founder of NWS with Doug and Grant Parsons, who I hope is here tonight. We are honored to be here for #1 New York Times bestseller Bonnie Garmus and guest host Cynthia Canty. Thank you for coming, and I'm gonna give it to Doug.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Tonight, I want to say this is important. Tonight's event is taking place on lands cherished and maintained for generations by the indigenous people of this area, where we and members of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians now live. So to the Anishinaabe people, we say thank you. Is this me?
I'd also like to thank our sponsors, our donors, our volunteers, our mighty, tiny, small, but mighty staff who do incredible things, our supportive board members, our donors, and the TCAP staff, Patrick in particular. Their support, hard work, your donations, the sponsors, you make this all possible. And the proceeds of the event go to our Raising Writers program, which are free creative writing classes. I also want to thank Doubleday for including Traverse City in Bonnie's lightning author tour across the country. I mean, and I want to say, maybe Todd will stand up. Todd Doughty is her publicist, and he himself is an author. He published Little Pieces of Hope, Happy Making Things in a Difficult World. And I have to say, he's one of the most gracious, if not the most gracious publicist I've ever worked with. So you need to get this book. You got to know his secret. And finally, a big thank you to the weather gods who brought us this great sunshine today.
This event, aside from your participation here tonight, was made possible in part by the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Michigan Arts and Culture Council. And we have a special sponsor this evening. We just met them backstage, Cambion Analytica, one of the country's leading bioscience analytical firms. They're right here. Stand up. Three of their women chemists from the company are here tonight. So wow, you just never thought the chemistry major would get that kind of applause. I want to share one more piece of good news. We publish a literary journal each year, and it's packed with the work of our student writers. And some of you may be parents or grandparents or relatives of those budding writers. And we're having a launch soon, next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow. You can find details about that on our website, but really it's a wonderful moment to hear student writers stand up and read their work. And if you can, come by and support it. Now, we'd like to introduce guest host Cynthia Canty and Bonnie Garmus.
Cynthia Canty is the former host and creator of Stateside Radio, a talk show covering all things Michigan. She reported news in the Detroit area for 40 years and earned many awards, including an Emmy and awards from the Michigan Association of Broadcasters, the Associated Press, and the Detroit Press Club. After retiring in 2019, Cynthia traveled the world. In fact, when I emailed her to ask her if she'd interview Bonnie tonight, she was relaxing by a Florida pool and wrote to me that she had just finished a spectacular book, Lessons in Chemistry.
Now, Bonnie herself, she is a copywriter and a creative director who has worked widely in the fields of technology, medicine, and education. And she does that little thing on the side called being a novelist. She's also a serious open water swimmer, a rower, and and a mother of two pretty amazing daughters. She was born in California, and a few years ago, she moved from Seattle to London with her husband and her dog, whose name is 99. Lessons in Chemistry is her first published book, believe it or not, and it sold an astonishing 2 million copies since it's come out just a short while ago.
Before we bring them on stage, we wanted to show a video of the upcoming TV series, the trailer, which is going to be on Apple Plus.
Bam! I can sing.
May I join you?
I can
You may.
jam. Wham!
You're one of the smartest people in this lab.
Boom! Bam! I'm a killer.
You hungry, little fella?
Yes, I am. If I can do it, you can too.
Welcome, viewers. My name is Elizabeth Zott, and this is Supper at 6.
Is mine on? Mine's on.
Yeah, all right. I have to say, just personally, it is so good to look out and see your faces. I've done some of these through Zoom when in those times that we don't want to think about. Isn't it great to be here with Bonnie here and all of you in person? And we know we have some of you joining us via live stream. And welcome one and all. It is a joy to be here. And welcome to Traverse City, Big Michigan. Welcome, Bonnie. Uh-oh. Okay, Bonnie's is out now. Okay. One thing I will say, it is the God's truth that I was taking my first, I retired in December 2019, just in time to be home, which was, I'm grateful for that. But I was in Vero Beach, Florida for 5 weeks. And my daughter and son-in-law came for a long weekend from Washington, where they're both lawyers. And she came and she said, "Mom, you have to read this book." I was finishing it on the plane and I was wiping tears away. And it was given to her by her mother-in-law, Avery. And I plowed through it sitting by the pool. And I think the day after I finished it, Anne wrote and said, "Would you be interested in talking to Bonnie?" And I'm like, yeah, I would.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're delighted to have you here. And the buzz about this book is, I mean, people are so jealous that I get to talk to you. I've been hearing from people on Facebook going, "Oh, I love the book. Book clubs love it." Or, are you blown away?
Oh, well, I live in a constant dream state. I mean, actually, after the book was sold, when we were in auction for the book, I kept thinking that I had made it all up, this whole thing, and I kept getting up in the middle of the night to check my email and see if I'd dreamed it all. And one night my husband grabbed my arm and he said, "Let me save you a trip." It happened.
And did it ever? And I know, let's hear it for an intrepid road warrior, because Bonnie is making the rounds and you look as fresh as if you hadn't seen an
You're so
airplane.
nice.
I mean it.
Oh.
It's terrific. Well, people did come to hear, not from me, but from you. Would you start, Bonnie, by giving us a sense, for those who haven't read Lessons in Chemistry, the arc of the story? What's it about?
Yeah. Well, I set the book in the late 50s, early 60s, and there's a woman, Elizabeth Zott, is a chemist who's not allowed to be a chemist because she's unwed and pregnant. And she gets fired from her job for that crime. And she ends up taking a job as a very reluctant TV cooking show host. But instead of teaching the housewives at home how to cook, she teaches them chemistry, because she wants to remind them of their innate capability And in doing so, she changes the status quo.
Perfect. Without giving away a lot of great stuff, too. Now, as we heard from Ann, you've spent your career as a copywriter. What kind of stuff were you writing about as a copywriter? What
Well-
did you like and what didn't you like?
Oh, there's a lot I didn't like, but the stuff I liked, I did a lot of campaigns. Copywriters usually write conceptual things, and so it's a very creative job, and I like that. It's like writing the shortest short stories you've ever seen. But I also wrote a lot of speeches, and so I was I'd say half-time speechwriter for a lot of people in technology and medicine and stuff. It's really kind of interesting. I met a lot of really interesting people.
And where did the idea come that there's a novel, there's fiction, creative stuff really brewing in here? When did that begin and how?
A bad mood. It turns out, passion comes in all forms. And I'd been at work, and I worked a lot in technology. I worked a lot for the really big technology companies. And I'd been in a meeting in a technology company in the Bay Area, and I was the only woman in the room. That was really common. It's still really common in technology. So I'd finished presenting my ideas, concepts for a big ad campaign. And after I'd done so, no one in the room said anything. And I'd worked with a lot of these people for a while. But about a few minutes later, a new vice president spoke up, and he said, I have an idea. And then he just repeated everything I'd said. And I said, I just said that. And he completely ignored me as if I wasn't there. And I said, also, it's right there on my PowerPoint slide. Anyway, he got complete credit for the campaign. And I left that meeting that day, astonished that no one had spoken up in my defense. I had defended myself, but it didn't work. And I went back to my desk, and I just thought that day, how many other women had been shut down like that? What a waste of time and talent around the globe. Well, I went back to my desk, and I was on a deadline. They expected something by 5. But instead, I wrote the first chapter of Lessons in Chemistry.
Yes! And Elizabeth had appeared in something else you'd written, hadn't she?
Yeah, I had started another novel. She was only in this other novel. She was 3 sentences long. I knew she was depressed, a chemist, and on television. I know, not a lot to go on. But that day, I felt like she was sitting there in the room with me, and she was saying, you've had a bad day. I've had a bad decade. And then that's how the story started.
Well, had you taken creative writing? Had you taken writing classes because I know from newscasting, there's a specific kind of writing you do when you're writing the news. And it's not creative, yet it is in the context and the parameters of writing news copy.
Well, copywriting is 100% creative writing. So it's just that it's very, very short. And so writing a novel is very, very long. And I kept being surprised that I wasn't done yet. But and I have taken writing classes, and I think they can be valuable, but I think also they can damage writers because you're being critiqued by people in your class who are also maybe not writers or not quite right. So you have to be careful about those classes. On the other hand, you meet other writers, and there's nothing like a room of writers. We're all kind of, the saddest sack people ever. It's just like, oh, great, anyway.
So because you did find a writing group, right?
Yeah,
Speaking
I did.
of that cocoon of fellow sad sack writers.
Yeah, in London. I'd moved to London, and I didn't know anyone. My husband and I were transferred, and this was one of many transfers I've had in my life. And he was gone for about 6 weeks, and I literally knew no one except for my work colleagues who were across the pond. And so I ended up joining a writing class that met once a week at night. And they were just great. We're still really great friends. And then that's actually how I met my agent. She walked into the class one night, and we talked about my book.
And your agent is Felicity Blunt,
Felicity Blunt.
who was a game changer for you.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Yeah.
Even to the point where her husband, Stanley Tucci, has a delightful Instagram feed making the cocktail. What was it? The cocktail for the
Disenchanted woman.
disenchanted
But I have
woman.
a story about that.
Tell us.
Well, see, I know it's a book about chemistry and I'm not a chemist. It's also a book about cooking and I am one of the worst cooks ever. So they asked me to come up with a cocktail recipe for the reader's guide, and I did. And then one night my phone rang. It was Felicity. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was about to go to bed, and she goes, "Bonnie, someone wants to speak to you." And then she moves aside, and Stanley is standing there, and he goes, "Bonnie, your cocktail sucks." So he spent 45 minutes on the phone with me, and he was drinking the whole time the cocktail. No, that's not quite right. And so by the end of it, he loved whatever he'd made, and I just wrote it down.
Such a great story. It's interesting if the buzz that has been created from this book, going, especially as I said, from the generations, the mothers and the daughters exchanging it, and I was so interested in what were the different generations getting from reading this book, and it was so like, you've got to read this. I asked a cousin of mine who is a young mom who's a teacher, what did you love? Because she went, "Oh, I love this book." I said, "What did you love?" "I enjoy," she said, "strong female protagonists, and Elizabeth fit the bill. The sexism in the story was shocking, even though I know it's based in truths. The sweet, sometimes awkward love story, heartwarming, and I appreciated the struggles and triumphs Elizabeth had through the piece, including how she navigated parenthood. And lastly, I adored 630 and his narration," whom we will talk about. And then a few years down the pathway of life, a friend of mine who, attorney Angie Povlitis, who Michiganders may know, was the lead prosecutor in the Larry Nassar case. So she knows, yes. Yeah, right. Bravo, Angie Povlitis. She wrote, "I wish I could be in the audience tonight." I said, "What do you love?" And she said, "The 50s, 60s perspective, all that educated, brilliant, professional women had to endure. I'm so grateful to be born when I was. I loved how unapologetically unconventional she was as a mother and a scientist. Lovely, unique story told so well."
Thank you.
From a few years apart from each perspective. What are you hearing and what is going on with this? You've got to share the book with the other generation.
It's been wonderful. You know, I'm very grateful. I'm very lucky. The book has been translated into 40 languages, and I've been traveling. I know I've been traveling around, and I go to these countries, and it's so incredible how alike we all are. You know, I was sitting in Dubai, and I was surrounded by about 20 or 25 women in burqas, and we were talking about women's rights of all things. And and I said, "Well, you know, things are a little tough right now in the United States with Roe versus Wade." And they went, "Yeah, things are tough for Americans." They were hilarious. But wherever I've gone, no, they were so charming. Wherever I've gone, you know, I hear over and over, we all want the same things, you know, and this includes men as well. We all want to be productive. We all want to be credited for our work. And we want, you know, safety and security, all the same things the world over. And that's what everyone keeps talking about. How can we be building a much better society than what we have?
You know, it is interesting, though. You think about the battles that were being fought by Elizabeth and women in the 50s, 60s, and earlier. I mean, there's a resonance, and still today, because as you were talking about what happened to you at work, I'm seeing heads nodding, going, you know, yeah, we've been there. And you think about those past generations, and it got me thinking about this young woman. Her name is Marie Claire. She came off the farm in Guelph, Ontario, took the train to Detroit, and went to Marygrove College and graduated in 1943 with a chemistry degree. She worked for an auto company, and she worked for a pharmaceutical company in Detroit, and then went to work as a clerk at an airline company, and then in 1948 married a young fireman who was home from the Pacific, and this is my mother. And she never worked a day out of the
Oh.
house after she was married.
Yep.
And of course, as children, we're so disinterested we're so wrapped up in our own lives, and you kind of figure your parents never had a life until you arrived. And I kept thinking about, why is this book grabbing me? And then I realized the stuff that my mother went through, this bright young chemist, that it was clear because I couldn't do quadratic equations, and she taught me quadratic equations. She could do numbers in her head. She was a bright woman, but she probably encountered that stuff and said, I don't need it. And never worked outside of the house after getting
That was
married.
my mom too. My mom was a nurse, but I think she wanted to be a doctor. And specifically, I think she wanted to be a surgeon. And she was not allowed to do any of that. She was a nurse, but she did return to nursing after we were all grown up. And she went back within the first year, she was nurse of the year at her hospital. And she was the only nurse in the entire area that volunteered for a new disease they just discovered called AIDS.
Oh.
Yeah, I was super proud of her. Yeah.
So as you were writing this, you were working this out and thinking of your mother and those who have gone.
All of those women in my neighborhood were always called average housewives. And, it was sort of like with you. I just think I never thought twice about, my mom talked about nursing. I went, yeah. And then you realize, oh my God, a generation of wasted talent. And we're still wasted everywhere around the world. And there are a lot of problems to solve out there.
There are. But then you also think about, so if we look right now in 2023, we certainly can argue that the women of the 40s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s didn't have the choices. Today, they can choose, but you really get the sense that for many young moms, they are crushed by the choices because they still have the kids, and they've got the deadlines, and they've got the jerk bosses that are taking credit for their ideas.
Yeah.
So it's almost, do you think Elizabeth would think we're making progress? Because we've got a lot of young women on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, no, I think that she would be unhappy, but I'll tell you, I was talking with a bunch of Finns in Finland, and they were explaining to me that they don't understand the U.S. system of childcare or leave for pregnant women because they get
We don't
3
either.
years, and that's men and women. So the men are actually, they take 50% of the responsibility for child rearing, and they claim that their divorce rate is the lowest in the world. I wonder if there's a correlation there. Anyway, yeah, so I have a Finnish friend, and he spent a year and a half off of his job, 80% pay, at home with the kids, and then his wife did. And their jobs are held for them.
Wow.
80% pay.
Well, and look across the border from Detroit, where in Canada, you got a year. My cousin, every child that came, it was a full year off. And I think a lot of us would agree that there's so much that needs to be done. So yeah, the choice is better, but there's still, the pay inequity is still.
Oh yeah, it's still there.
Still definitely there. But it must just really make your heart sing as you're going around the world and realizing that this thing you worked so hard on is resonating with women. As you say, it shows how alike we all are.
It's resonating also with men, which has been really wonderful for me, because while there's a few bad actors in the book, there are a lot of male allies in the book. I'm lucky to have a few really generous male allies in my life who have stood up for me, and I remember in one meeting, someone interrupted me, and then he was talking over me, and one of my male allies said, she wasn't done talking, and we'd like to hear what she has to say.
Yes.
That man was exactly the model that we need.
Yet, as somebody that one of my listeners on my Facebook page that I keep for my listeners said that she wrote that she wished there was a punch Donati button that she could have hit throughout the book.
It's so funny.
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely. I have to ask, Why is Elizabeth a rower? I know you are a rower, but there's nothing you do in this story that isn't very intentional and very beautifully thought out. Why not a swimmer? Why not a runner? What is it about the rowing that fit for her in this story?
Well, two things. The first thing is, as I've revealed, I'm not a chemist and I'm not a cook, but I am a rower, and I thought it would be valuable to actually add something I didn't have to research. But also, as it turns out, the book has an underlying theme of balance and imbalance. That's the war that we're in now in the world, and that's the war we're in the workplace. And so, in the book, there's a balance between the dark and the light. Chemistry is the central science. It is a science of balance. You can't have an unbalanced chemical equation. And rowing is the sport of balance. And I don't know, are there any rowers here? Yay!
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So you know that you have to set a boat. It has to be really perfectly balanced in order to row well. Because if it isn't, then you do this other sport, and that sport is called swimming. So I think, I really wanted to have balance in there, and that was the underlying thing.
I had seen rowers when I was actually on the Thames when I was visiting our nephew, and I had it looks effortless.
Yes,
looks
it does.
glidey and boy, did I learn how it is not.
No. I would just watch the boat race between Oxford and Cambridge, and the stroke passed out. Right at the end of he was taken away in an ambulance. And I thought, oh yeah, I was in a boat like that. It's excruciating. I have no idea why we do it, but we love it.
And you also, you are a long distance swimmer?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Tough.
Well, I don't know.
What kind of, what's furthest you swum? I mean,
Well,
I'm happy to do 2 lengths, and I'm like, okay, time for the
the longest swim I've ever done was about 10 miles. I know. Well, you have an escort. You have someone throwing you horrible gel packs and things. Horrible. But no, they have swim marathons. They're about 6 miles. And no, I know it sounds long, but you know what? You're laying down the whole time. I mean,
what do you I know for people who run, it's sometimes a time to work ideas. What's going on in your mind when you're doing 10 miles of
it's
Australian
very
crawl?
meditative. I mean, I don't try to go fast. I just plod along.
Okay.
And I apparently make some sort of sound that people mock, like in a swimming pool. And I make this sound, I go, mm. And my fellow swimmers go, you sound like a whale. I don't know. Have they swum with whales? How would they know? But yeah, I go into some other area in my brain.
I love it. We are here at the National Writers Series. So let's talk a little more about writing and getting published. Do we have any writing hopefuls here? People that have that book lurking in their mind?
Come on.
Okay,
Okay.
We do. So do you have a preferred place to write, or can you write anywhere, anytime? I get fascinated as I hear different writers talk about the process and what does or doesn't have to happen to be able to create.
Well, I always wanted to be one of those writers that goes to a coffee shop and sits there, J.K. Rowling. But my problem is that everything I write, I read out loud. And if you do that in a coffee shop, they ask you to leave. And so I don't do that. I like to, we live in a very small flat in London. I write at the dining room table, and then at the end of the day, I shove everything aside and we eat. And my husband works 3 feet from me because during COVID, we found ourselves together at the dining room table.
Oh boy, a lot of togetherness.
A lot. And he didn't know that I read everything out loud. And so it was the coffee shop problem. So he turned to me and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I read everything out loud." And he goes, "Oh my God." So he wears these huge headphones. Noise canceling, yeah.
So when you wrote the first chapter with that crummy day at work, which was how long ago? How long did it take you to write this?
Well, I wrote the book it took me 5 years to write the book. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, as I was going through the book and I saw a sentence such as, and I will quote, his breakthrough concerning the reactivity of dibenzoselenophene put him on the cover of Chemistry Today. Those are not words that are commonly trip off the tongue. Most people do not have that in vernacular. And you already answered the question saying you weren't a chemist. What did it take? Because I'm sure you knew you had to get it right, or you were going to hear from
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, no, I really respect scientists, and I wanted to make this as accurate as possible. You can't really Google old science very effectively. You end up putting a lot of anachronisms in. So I bought an old textbook off of eBay from the 40s and 50s, and I taught myself chemistry in our, not a good idea. Ask the London Fire Department. So, yeah, I started doing chemistry experiments at home, and I'd only do them when my husband was out of town because of the vapors and the, and I didn't have much of a social life. So anyway, but I certainly met my neighbors this way. And no, it was, so I did one experiment that, well, we'll just say it wasn't successful. And my neighbor saw flames through our window, and she called the fire department. They're really super fast in London. I don't know why. They're slow at everything else but fire, and they're so polite. Oh, Mom, you seem to be having a problem here. And, and they're just spraying everything. Anyway, the lead fireman looked at the chemistry book sitting on the counter, and he said, "We're not doing chemistry experiments in our flat, are we?" And I said, "Well, we're renters." And he goes, "Oh." I know.
Oh my goodness.
He came back another time too. I had a much bigger flames the second time. He walked in, he said, "I have a present for you. It's called a fire extinguisher." Yeah.
Some scary things could have happened. I was in pre-med, and it was chemistry actually that drove me out.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
have a lot of
switched to
respect for
history.
chemists. Yeah.
But and then you had somebody go through that because it was phrase after phrase, and it was written with great assurance. So you did a good job with that
Thank you.
vintage textbook. So were you writing during COVID?
I was editing. Well, yeah, I finished it during COVID, and then I was rewriting it one more time during COVID. Yeah.
Take us through the nuts and bolts. You finished something that's like your first pass.
Mm-hmm. My 15th pass.
And that, like, before anybody saw it, how many times?
Oh, I rewrite every chapter. I don't go forward until I feel good about a chapter. I won't. So I might rewrite that chapter 15 times. That's really, in copywriting, that's all we do. We just sit around and go, "I'm on my 23rd draft." And they go, "Oh, just 23?
Oh.
People go, "I've done 2 drafts of my book." And I go, "Oh, just getting started."
Well, you can overdo pie crusts, and suddenly it's not a good pie crust. When do you know it's good? When do you know that you haven't maybe beaten it into submission by working it over and over again?
I think, my agent, when she signed me, the book wasn't done. She'd only read 10,000 words, but she decided foolishly to sign me. And then she asked me to have it. She asked me when it would be done, and I lied and I said June. I had no intention of finishing it by June. But then by April, she called me and she goes, "I really want to see it." So I did finish it by June. But she, she had a kind of, the whole time I was like, I'm not quite done. She goes, "Give it to me." So she forced me to be done. And then we worked on it. I rewrote a few things with her input.
And then
she took it to Frankfurt Book Fair when she said the night before, I don't know if you know what Frankfurt Book Fair is.
Explain. Yeah.
It's the biggest book fair in the world. And what happens is agents go and they have new books that they want to try to sell to publishers. And it's just like this, I don't know, it's wild. And so I'd had a friend whose book went to Frankfurt Book Fair and she got no offers. And the night before my book went, my agent called me and she said, "Look," I love Felicity. She's very look, you've written kind of a quirky book here. So we're not going to keep our hopes up. You know, what happens, happens. And then she called me 24 hours later and she goes, oh, cancel that. It's going very well.
I mean, yeah, is it doing very well? How many copies worldwide has it sold?
I don't know. I don't have the figures, but it's doing really well. I was on the bestseller list in 16 countries concurrently, and I just couldn't believe it. But yeah, Germany is just exploded. It's almost 1 million copies in Germany alone.
Just wow. I think it's probably an understatement to say, Bonnie, that you stepped up to the plate your first time at bat in the majors, and you swung for it, and you hit a home run.
Thank you.
A grand slam, exactly. What's been the biggest surprise in all of this for you? The success of this book, this touring around the world, and finding that your words are resonating in people's souls. What's been the biggest surprise for you?
Well, I think that has been the biggest surprise. You know, you sit alone and you talk out loud and you create these characters and you just think, this is just in my head and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I'd written another book that went nowhere. I got 98 rejections on that. So I was expecting the same. I really was. And even Felicity said, you know, keep your expectations low. This is a very tough business. And so that's what I was expecting. But I think what has been the most surprising thing are the readers all over the world who, oh gosh, you know, we're so much alike in every country. We feel the same, you know, frustrations and everything. It's been wonderful to talk with people and hear about how they're trying to change things in their country.
And then the buzz continues where it gets picked up, and we're going to be seeing it on Apple TV Plus with Brie Larson, as you saw. So, and I have talked to other authors who have had their works put on the screen, and some love it and some abhor the process. Yeah. Where do you what's it been like? How involved were you? Did you want to be more involved, less involved?
I wanted to write it. I've written plenty of ads. I thought, how hard could it be? But I couldn't because it was picked up even before the book was published. And there were these 38 studios were competing for this. I just couldn't believe it. I was just walking around in a daze. And then they narrowed it down to 8 studios. My agents did. And then I had to talk to each studio on Zoom. It was during COVID. And it's so fun, but also funny because you're talking to all these people you only see on the red carpet. And you're like, wow, you look really different without makeup. It was really fantastic though, but I settled on this one company and I wasn't able to write it. I'm not involved. I am co-executive producer, and that means do nothing.
And get a credit on the Internet Movie Database.
Right. I did get to read the scripts and make notes, but our deal was I could make as many notes as I wanted, and they could throw them away. They've been so nice, and I had dinner with Brie Larson and my other executive producers last Sunday in LA with my publicist, Todd. Yeah, Todd and I were like, oh, wow.
Wow.
I know.
Well, and somewhere in my research and reading about you and about the book, I uncovered a little nugget. Is anybody watching on Apple TV Plus right now? Jennifer Garner has The Last Thing He Told Me. Yeah? Guess what was going on while they were shooting the movie or shooting the miniseries? Jennifer Garner decided to form an impromptu book club. Do you know this?
No.
It was an interview with her co-star Anjuri Rice, who plays her daughter Bailey or stepdaughter Bailey in this thing. They formed an impromptu book club with the director Olivia Newman and writer Laura Dave, and they all read Lessons in Chemistry.
Oh my God. Wow, I didn't know that.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
for telling me that.
So the next time if you're in Hollywood and you run into Jennifer Garner, make sure you say, that's my book.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I also have to say, as someone who is staring down and in a few months at turning 70, I love, I mean, yay, young people, you do you, young people, but and there's plenty of the best 30 under 30. I love that you reach this success at a further down life's path.
Yeah, thank you. I do
yes.
too. I'm,
Yes.
yay.
I don't know if you could have written this at 25 or 30.
No, I think it really helped to be older, to be honest. And also it gives you so much time to practice your craft, because for me, that was the most important thing, to get the language right, you can tell a story, but you have to tell it well. And that's what we always used to say in advertising, if you don't tell the story well, then don't tell it. And so there were, a lot of copywriters become novelists, like Salman Rushdie and Kurt Vonnegut and shitty people like that. It's really, their copywriting is teeming. Everybody has a novel in their desk.
I cannot, and I want you to start thinking of questions for Bonnie, because I do want to give you guys, it's so, again, it's so wonderful to see you in person. So we're going to start turning over and letting you ask Bonnie some questions in just a few moments, but I cannot miss the chance to talk and have you tell us more about one of my personal favorite characters with 4 legs, a wet nose, and his very own Instagram page, the one and only 630.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness. He is like the best canine version of the Greek chorus you could ever ask for. He's there saying what's on your mind. Tell us, where did that come from, the idea that this is going to be a fully participating character, and it works so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Well, 630 is the only character in the book who is actually based on a live being. That is my dog, Friday. And Friday's gone now, but she was a brilliant dog. We'd gotten her from the pound. She'd been very badly abused. I mean, when I say badly, her previous owner went to jail because he burned cigarettes out on her back and cut her and knocked out her teeth. And no, he was a horrible man. But my kids picked her out, despite the fact that she had 2 kinds of mange. And as the shelter employee helpfully said, it's probably not the kind that humans can get. Probably. But my kids picked her out, and we couldn't say no, even though she was not attractive. And we brought her home, and it just turned out we had really adopted Einstein. She was a couple years old, and we realized that she was smart when we didn't teach her words, she taught herself words. And she would watch us at dinner, and instead of just laying there, she would watch our mouths move. And so her whole dinner presence was like this. She's talking, and now he's talking. She's talking, you're talking. I think you're talking again. And then she'd start to demonstrate what she knew. And one day, my favorite example is that I said out loud, I can't find my keys. I was rushing to work. Friday went with me to work. And I said, I can't find my keys. I can't find them anywhere. I was tearing around the house, and then I turned, and Friday was going through my gym bag. Then she's going through my briefcase. And then she got in the hall closet, and she started going through all the pockets. She found my keys, threw them on the floor like, let's go.
Wow. Oh.
I know, but it gets worse than that. I mean,
Go.
better, really better.
Tell.
We were transferred to Switzerland, and Friday learned German. And I'm not even kidding. We actually have proof of this. We have proof of this because dogs in Switzerland have to take a dog test that's in German and lasts an hour. And the owner is not involved. And I don't know where she picked up German, maybe from the other dogs in the neighborhood. But I was afraid to let her go do this test. And I explained to the guy, she doesn't understand German. He's like, don't worry. And thinking, your dog has to pass this test. And we went away, and he comes back, and he said, this dog is not American. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, she's Swiss. This dog is the only dog that passed the dog exam in 2 years, get 100% on the German dog exam.
Oh.
I wanted her to take my kid's SAT test. Yeah, she was incredible.
And how long was she with you?
Well, she was with us. She died when she was 15. Then
had
we
her a
got her
long
when she was
time.
about 2, so 13 years.
And then I know there's an Instagram page for 630,
Yeah.
the dog, and that is your
Dog
current-
99. Yeah.
And
99 is pissed about the whole 6:30 thing.
Then-
She's like over it. Yeah.
But tell us, because I love the story behind 99's name.
Oh, yeah. 99 has nothing to do with 6:30. She was named for, does anyone remember Get Smart? Oh,
Yeah,
yay!
Barbara Feldon's
Agent 99.
character.
Okay, yeah. When I was growing up, my best friend and I thought that was the best TV show on television. So our entire lives, we called each other 86 and 99. Every day, everything we signed said 86 and 99. And unfortunately, my friend died in a tragic accident about 12 years ago. And I was really, really upset for a long time. And then Friday had died as well. And when my husband and I went to adopt another dog, I said, do you mind if we name her 99? And he goes, no, I know what you're doing. And, it's like I had my friend back in some respect. It was great. Anyway, she's 99, everybody, but in German, she's halb sieben. Oh, actually, no, she's 99. 6:30 is halb sieben in German. Yeah.
And if you haven't had a chance, check out isn't it 6:30?
6:30, yeah. I hardly ever keep up with Instagram.
Yeah, it is.
I can
it's-
just tell, it's like,
Yeah.
Bonnie, keep up
look
with
on
this.
Instagram
Yeah,
and look
anyway,
for 6-30,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you'll see the pictures of this.
6:30 the dog. yeah.
6:30 the dog.
Yeah.
Yes, that is worth it. So, what's next? Now, I mean,
I'm working on another book. Yeah. It's not a sequel, but I'm working on another book. I'm enjoying it. I can't talk about it because I change it constantly.
Are we out of the 60s?
Yeah.
You moved out of the 60s
I moved out a little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in the 80s.
Ooh.
Oh, that is still historical fiction, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out, okay, my editor just told, I didn't even know I'd written historical fiction. I had no idea. I thought it's historical fiction. But she told me 1992 is historical fiction. So take that. I know. It's like, wow, are you kidding me?
I don't like hearing that.
I know.
Not at all.
I
Not at
know.
all. All right. We have so many of you here tonight, and I know you have questions for Bonnie, and I want to start just a little bit earlier, just because I want to try to give as many of you a chance as we can. We have microphones so everybody can hear. So do you want people to come down to the microphone?
Yes, please. And
Please do.
please keep your questions short. We have a lot of people.
So let's come on down. Come on down. We did this worked very well when I did a sit down with Diane Rackham at University of Michigan. We had the two things. So anybody with a question for Bonnie, please come down and
Now you're on the spot. Come on.
yeah, come on.
I know I would rather sit in the audience and have someone come to me.
I know.
But-
It won't hurt though. It won't hurt at all. In fact, I did hear somebody out there that says they do have that book rattling around in their mind.
Mhm.
You're probably hearing from people. What advice would you give them? What have you learned through this incredible success? But really, the success happened, I'm sure, when that book got done and you had created it. So what advice do you want to offer to people that are harboring that hope?
Well, I think the most important thing is to read and read broadly. And then the other important thing is to just make sure you're working on the craft of writing, because it's one thing to have a great story in your head. It's another thing to get it on paper and make it as strong as you can. And so that's the big thing. But the third thing is do not give up. This is an industry of rejection. If you don't get rejected, you can't be in the club. So prepare yourself for rejection. It's okay.
Thank you so much for coming here. Very excited to meet you. Our book club is here. I want to ask you, Elizabeth Zott is such a cool cucumber throughout the book. And she's just very factual, not high emotion, and is always challenged by sexism. Is that you? How do you create this persona?
That's my role model. I wrote Elizabeth Zott as my role model. I wanted to be in the head of somebody who knew exactly who she was, never apologized, and just wasn't going to put up with the kind of limits that have been created for women. She just ignored them because they're not scientific. They're not valuable. And, we operate on myths a lot in our society. And so she just says no to that.
That was so refreshing. Thank you.
Thank you.
What did your kids think about Elizabeth's parenting?
You never let me do that, Mom. No, they were really, they really like it. I said, I want to see, we have Harriet, the older generation, we have Elizabeth Zott. Harriet has no education, she's unattractive, and yet she still has a lot to offer. And then we have Elizabeth, who has a lot of education, but does not want to be a mother. And then we have Mad. Here's the one person in the story who's raised without limits. So they were like, okay, but you made us do our homework and stuff. Not Mad.
Hi there. Thank you for coming to Michigan.
Yeah.
So you were not heard that day in the conference room. They've heard you now. Do they know you were talking about them?
Oh, so this is the greatest part of that story. I was doing an event in Seattle, and all of a sudden, and I haven't seen these guys in years and years, all of a sudden I see one of them, who was a friend of mine, coming at me, coming down the aisle towards the book signing table. He's carrying 10 copies of the book, one for everyone in the meeting. And no, but he bent down beside me and he whispered in my ear, he said, "Thank you so much for not naming our names."
Hi, what's your question?
I loved your book also. Thank you so much. I loved organic chemistry. It was probably my favorite class.
Okay, that's strange.
Okay, I know it is. But the burning question that I have is, did you really, are pistachios really combustible? And was that one of your experiments?
Ask the London Fire Department.
I
You should
wanna
have seen
know
that
how
guy.
you
He
did it.
goes, "What is with all the pistachios everywhere?" Yes, they're highly flammable. Yeah, they are. It's under certain conditions.
We've got a question. Is this from one of our online?
This is from our live stream audience. We have 152 people beaming in right now.
Hi.
This is Keely Johnson. She says, did you come up with the title and the art for your book? And if not, who did?
The title came from my agent. The night before we went to Frankfurt, or the book went to Frankfurt, we discovered that my original title, Introduction to Chemistry, was slotting into the nonfiction. Yeah, it would have died there in nonfiction. So we had 1 minute to change the title, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And she goes, how about Lessons in Chemistry? And I said, great. So that is how that came about. And then the cover art, no, that's from my publisher, and I wasn't too sold on this. They did let me have, input, but I thought it looked too much like romance, and unfortunately the book has disappointed romance readers across the globe. So that is...
And this is the U.S. cover, right?
That's the U.S. cover, but I think they're using that cover in Poland, and they use it in Canada. And so I've gotten some negative feedback. Also, women scientists don't like it. Women in general, except for romance readers. Yeah, romance readers are kind of mad about the whole, anyway, but the paperback cover is beautiful. Whenever that comes out, it'll be really nice.
One of the things you had mentioned was not only mothers and daughters sharing, but men. What are you hearing from the men who read this, and what are they taking away, and what's speaking to them?
It's been incredible. I hear from men every day now, every single day. This book has been adopted into 2 boys' schools outside of London, and I hear from those boys because the deans of those schools said, we've got to end sexism one day. Maybe if we educate boys early, they'll stop having these attitudes. But I hear from the boys, my favorite direct message was from a kid, he's 13 or 14. He wrote me and he said, Dear Bonnie Garmus, thank you for writing Lessons in Chemistry. It was way better than Lord of the Flies.
Oh my goodness. I think you need to have that engraved. Absolutely.
is full of a lot of twists and turns. Sorry for anybody who hasn't read it, but you've had a year. Something big happens to Calvin on page 91.
Oh, you're going to do this?
So
This is my
why?
publicist.
Why?
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 Okay, so.
Well, he went there. I was careful
Yes.
not to.
What Todd is referring to is a 13-year-old girl came up to me at an event with her mom, and her mom said she wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. And the 13-year-old girl said, why did you kill Calvin? And I said, he had to go. And I think I scarred her for life that evening.
What book she's going to write someday.
I know. No, I did explain to her, this is a book about women standing on their own. There are a lot of single moms out there. There are a lot of single women out there. And this is about a woman who would not have been able to do her research had she been with a man. And that's just the fact of that generation.
Hi, welcome to Traverse City.
Thank
We're
you.
so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
I decided when reading your book that I trust your taste implicitly. And so I wanted to ask for you to name 3 of your favorite books from 3 different genres.
Oh.
Wow.
Give it to me, girl.
Okay. Can I do nonfiction as well?
That's a genre, yeah.
Has anyone read An Immense World by Ed Young? Oh, somebody has. Yeah, it's really good. It's all about the animal kingdom and how marvelous animals are, how they have skills that we have never dreamed of having. It's really, really well done.
Somebody write that down for me.
Yeah, I just finished a book called In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. It's about World War II and 2 gay men who fall in love during the war. It's really, really good. Third genre. Can I go back to nonfiction? Okay, I know, hold on. History.
Give me a guilty pleasure book.
A guilty pleasure book.
Those are great.
Oh, okay, I just reread Where'd You Go, Bernadette? Because I see, I just reread it. Totally holds up. Plus, I had the pleasure of meeting Maria Semple in Seattle. Boy, were we like thick as thieves. We were just like, the whole time. It was so great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A question over here.
Yeah, I loved what you said about the kids using it in the school. How about women's studies? Is this book becoming part of the syllabus in different colleges and high schools?
Yeah, it is. It's been adopted into some universities, either for summer reading or for gender classes, or even this is great. In Cambridge, the chemistry department adopted it just for chemistry, so they'd have something fun to read once in a while.
Oh.
Yeah, so it is being adopted.
Hi. So I'm realizing as I'm standing here that I'm going to be sad and negative, and I don't mean to be. But I did just want to tell you that my husband was diagnosed with cancer when we were 22, and we're 25 now, and it's just like really thrown us for a loop. Like all we thought that our life was going to be is not anymore. But reading the book and Elizabeth and then your story, and again, you made a comment, just accomplishing so much and doing all of this, like not in your 20s, has just really given me a lot of hope, and I just really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. But I also have a question, and this is where I don't mean to be negative, but I was listening to a podcast with a scientist, and she just said that she did a report that was like incredible and received all these awards, but she was getting blown up on Twitter because all of these men were like discrediting it and saying this is not right. And I just wondered if you had gotten any messages or comments just being like, just anything of the that Elizabeth did with science or anything, anybody saying like this isn't accurate, or just trying to like tear you down at all for something that you love and something that's fun. I just wasn't sure if that had happened to you at all.
I had made sure the book was read by 2 PhD chemists who were pretty mad at me because they said, wait, you didn't mention it's set in the 50s. And I went, oh, surprise. But also, I was really concerned. Okay, the one pushback I've gotten, rowers. They said, you know what? I know, rowers. They said, oh, there was no erg at that time. Wrong. There was an old erg, it was developed in Cambridge in the 50s that measured your input and output. An erg measures energy usage. The concept too, people say the erg wasn't invented until 1981. Wrong. The Brits did it way before us. And so, yeah, sorry, rowers, in case you were going to write me and say, you know, the erg didn't exist back then. Yes, it did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck to you.
First, thank you. I would just feel like I'm repeating everyone, but books, as we know, are gates to so many things and learning so much. My question to you is about Elizabeth's relationship with her brother. And it seems to be that that was the first major relationship prior to Calvin. How did that come to you? Where did you pull that from? And then also her family setting. How did you see that affecting her and her decisions and who she essentially came to be?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Zott never wanted to be a performer, and her father was basically a performer. And that's why I wanted to make her a performer, to make her, I just put her through hell, you know? What else can I throw her way? But her relationship with her brother was important to me because he's the one who taught her to read. And you know, I love the fact that, you know, she knew who he was. As she said back then, he was homosexual. There's nothing wrong with that. And I love that she would know that as a scientist. Scientists, of course, know that. You know, gender is, as they say now, a social construct. It always has been. And race also is a social construct. So that was really, really important to me to put that in, to have her say it, because scientifically, genetically, and I say this all the time, you know, sexism, racism is scientific ignorance.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, what's your question?
Hi. Thanks for coming.
Mhm.
I didn't read the book, but I listened to the audio book.
Oh.
And I have to say, first of all, she did a great job. with
She's
the
British. You can't tell, right? Except when she says Jack Lalonde.
Yeah. So we listened to the book on a 4,000-mile road trip recently, and I have to thank you because my wife loved the book, and I was able to get an extra 100 miles a day. It's a male thing, right?
Yeah, right.
But here's my question. Since the cat's out of the bag on page 91, why did you burden 630 with the death?
Well, you know, Elizabeth blames herself because she was the one who gave Calvin the leash. And the whole idea there was the metaphor of holding people back, leashing them. And so she makes Calvin put 630 on a leash, and that ends up destroying him. And so really he blames himself, the dog, but Elizabeth blames herself. And it was really just a metaphor for society holding us back.
Hi. I'm in that same genre you are. I'm in my 70s. And so half a generation behind Elizabeth. And there were so many moments in the book I can relate to. I was a cellular biology major in my undergraduate days. And in a way, there was some kind of sad, stressful remembrances. When they were talking about Dr. Meyer.
Yeah.
The fact that I had professors that I didn't dare go see without one of my friends. One of the guys had to go with you.
Yeah.
And then we have all of this going around with the Me Too movement and stuff.
Yeah.
And also, I could relate to her in the touching, because how many of us have been in a workplace where, especially 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, men didn't know how to keep their hands to themselves. And I'm just wondering, number one, how much of those experiences you went through, because you say older, and also how much pushback have you gotten from people who say you wouldn't have had two characters that would have been raped by professors and that
None,
kind of
no
thing.
pushback.
When I think that was something that everybody talked about, you just, I mean, every woman and half the guys warned the women in class.
Yeah.
You don't go see these professors.
Right. And I think, what's interesting is that I get direct messages from women who have been assaulted by their advisors in 2023. And
Oh.
2 of them have left their PhD programs because they're not believed, and the third one is suing the university because he's done it to other women. So it's really interesting. I haven't gotten very much pushback. I think it's because 1 in 6 American women will be assaulted in their lifetime, sexually assaulted. And, I was saying this to a British audience, and they were going, God, America's bad. And I said, and it's 1 in 5 in the UK. Anyway, no, I feel your pain. I think I've been in audiences of women where someone actually asked, women are not always going to say in front of an audience, me too. But the me too is so prevalent. It's just amazing.
Well, and I think back and think, I'm so thankful I had all these guys watching out for me.
Yeah.
Because it could have been me too.
Absolutely.
When I think about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
And what's your question?
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
It's great to see you. I read your book because one of my daughters recommended it to my wife. My wife read it, and then I read it. And so I'm one of your male champions, and I recommend it to so many people. And I just want to say, I thought that it would have been great if you could have been part of the series. Did you ever have an opportunity to be a part of that series?
Yeah, I did. And I turned it down immediately because the idea of being in front of a camera terrified me. But also, when I went out to Hollywood to be on set, I had COVID. I flew from London and I tested negative. I felt fine. I had a PCR test. I landed and I tested positive. And then 5 days later, when I returned to London, I tested negative. I don't know if I had it or not, but they wouldn't let me on set. But they wrote me into the script, and I really did not want this part. The part was replacing Elizabeth Zott on TV. I went, oh, great. That's kind of, I have to follow Brie Larson? No. Anyway, so yeah.
Okay, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
Very excited to be here with my book club. We are also educators from Jackson, and we're here for professional development purposes. Just putting that out there for y'all.
Yay.
I'm really surprised nobody asked this question before me, but first of all, I loved 6:30. Hands down, I'm a dog lover. That was one of my favorite characters, and I value the fact that you share that there is some grains of truth that come from your life with 6:30's portion of the story. And then you mentioned your mom, who might have aspired to do something bigger than what she actually did. And in the story, there's a little snippet about the audience member that Elizabeth encouraged to pursue her dreams. And so my first question was that your mom's cameo in your story?
Kind of, yeah.
And then my second question is, are there other cameos in your story from your life that have been woven in as snippets of the fabric of the story?
No, I'm really afraid of the number of NDAs I'm under. So I don't, to be honest, I would never write about anyone I really, really know because it's very confining to do that. I'd rather make them all up. And I wanted Elizabeth to be fresh to me. I wanted her to be my role model, and I could picture her. But yeah, that one snippet of that woman, that was sort of my mom. This is going to sound terrible, but when I was growing up, she used to say women are too dumb to be doctors.
Oh.
Because that's what she had been told.
That's what she was told.
And my dad would argue with that a little bit. But then he'd say, yeah, women really can't, do those sort of things because, they have they're so sensitive or whatever. It's just like, ugh. Anyway, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. We do have time for about 1 or 2 more.
Bonnie, would you consider running for president?
Have you gotten that one before?
Oh God, I can just see my kids. Cool house, Mom. No, it is. I'm so glad you said that because there's a new ad campaign coming out for the book, and it says Elizabeth Zott for president.
Very good.
Yeah.
I haven't got a question, but I've got a cute story. So excited.
Just stand a little bit closer to the mic so everybody can.
I'm so excited to come and get your book. So I had heard about it. So I ran down to the library And I said, I went up to the desk and the girl was standing there looking at me and I said, do you have lessons in chemistry? And she said, no, we don't do that here. I said, no, it's a book. It's a book. And she goes, oh, okay, well, I'll put you on the list. And I was 30 on the list to get your book. And I did finally read it, and I had to read it in 2 weeks because it had to go back to the library.
I know.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Crystal. I came from Florida with my friends book club who have done nothing but rave about this. And I'm so glad you did not kill off 630 because then I wouldn't be able to finish the book.
Right, right.
No dog deaths. Kelvin, not so bad. I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but I've heard nothing but good things and I travel a lot and I've seen them in every single airport store. But what I was wondering is you said you narrowed it down to 5 studios. Which one did you pick and why?
I picked Aggregate Films because originally the writer who was going to be doing the adaptation was Susanna Grant. She wrote Erin Brockovich. Don't get much better than that. But of course, and by the way, Aggregate Films is Jason Bateman. He's one of my
Is
executive
that
producers.
Jason? Oh my goodness.
And Michael Costigan, who did Brokeback Mountain, was another one.
Wow.
No, they're wonderful people. But then Susanna's movie got greenlit about 3 months into the adaptation, and she had to leave because you don't turn down a greenlit movie. I totally understand. They hired another writer, and she just seemed to be going down the wrong path, and Brie Larson fired her. And then 2 weeks before filming started, they hired another writer. So it went through some issues, and then and now it's done. So
Were you happy with the final result?
Pardon me?
Were you happy with the final result?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm not. They've changed. It's Hollywood. This is whenever I talk to them, they go, remember, tell everyone it's an adaptation. And then someone said, it's like adaptation means you blew it. But no, they are so nice to me. They're still in editing. It's not completely done. But I think they know that they kind of struggled with 630. And I think they're very worried about that. I know. Oh, it's okay.
Because you can always go right to your shelf, pick
Yeah.
it up, and there's 630. It's interesting. I always find I like whatever's on screen better if I see it first, and then the book is like, cool, bonus. There's
Yeah.
so much more. If
Yeah.
I love the book, then I'm going, well, where's this? Where's that?
I know.
But
Yeah.
that
There's
does-
a little bit of that.
there-
Yeah.
there is a little bit of
Yeah.
that.
But they do what they have to do that. The book doesn't fall into 50-minute segments.
No, and you, fascinatingly, and you make it work on the book, lots of different points of view. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
suspect
they
that's
had-
something that they were probably wrestling with.
It was really hard. It's a really hard book to adapt. And these people have been great to me. So I have no complaints. Whatever happens, happens.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
We are about wrapped. I want to make sure, did everybody who wanted to ask a question get a chance to come up to the microphone? Because we certainly want to give you the opportunity to do that. But before we wrap up and say goodbye to Bonnie and good night to you, we have a little fun photographic thing we'd like to have everybody be a part of. Could everybody who's got a book bring it out? Bring out your books. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this. This is great.
God.
Okay, and I'm going to step out of the way, and
I kind of forgot about this part already.
we're going to take a picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You want mine with all my stickies?
I don't have one. All right.
You're going to be part of a Bonnie picture. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Oh my gosh. This was
Thank
fun.
you very much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you both, Cynthia, Bonnie, and we'll see you all out in the lobby.